So today's the 50th anniversary of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, and I recently attended a church service at the Old Mariners Church in Detroit that commemorated the 50th anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, where relatives of the crewmen rang the church bell to remember those that had been lost. This church was famously mentioned in Gordon Lightfoot's song when he said, "In a musty old hall in Detroit, they prayed in the Maritime Sailors' Cathedral." And today I wanted to share a few interesting facts about this church. It was actually first created in 1842 by a woman named Julia Anderson who lived in a mansion on Woodbridge and Woodward. After the Erie Canal was created, shipping on the Great Lakes greatly increased, and Anderson thought that mariners needed a place to worship when they stopped in Detroit. It also provided other necessities to sailors such as bathing and food. Hence, the Mariners Church. The church that you see here, though, was constructed in 1849. Detroit was actually the last stop on the Underground Railroad for many, and was nicknamed Midnight for freedom seekers who had crossed the Detroit River into Canada. And this church was a place for freedom seekers to hide from bounty hunters, attempting to take them back down south. This would have been when the church was at the corner of Larned and Rivard. Even after the Civil War, this church helped the needy around Detroit. Next to it was a place called the Mariners Inn that offered rehab services for people dealing with substance abuse. The church was almost demolished for another structure in 1955 before a Detroit news journalist named George Stark raised money to move it to its present location. This was successful, and the church was moved to a place that was once an Indian council house and then an office for the Army Corps of Engineer where the husband of Julia Anderson, a colonel named John Anderson, once worked. When they moved the church, they found a tunnel underneath it, and assumedly, this would have been where freedom seekers would have made their way towards the Detroit River and Canada. It is now famous today for tolling its bell 29 times after the Edmund Fitzgerald sunk in 1975, and 10 years later, Gordon Lightfoot performed the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald at the Mariners Church. The lyrics at that time were, "In a musty old hall in Detroit, they prayed in the Maritime Sailors' Cathedral," but he thought this church was so beautiful after visiting it in 1985 that he changed those lyrics to "a rustic old hall in Detroit" for the rest of his career. In 2006, they altered the 29 bell rings to 8 bell rings to honor all those who had been lost in the Great Lakes, with 7 bell rings honoring a different Great Lake or seaway or river, and the 8th honoring military members who had passed on the Great Lakes. And in 2023, after Lightfoot's passing, they rang the bell 30 times, 29 times for those who had sunk on the Fitz, and one more for Lightfoot himself.